Hey everybody, welcome to another, I'll call this one exciting, another exciting video as we talk about my book, From Debtor to Better, The Details of Debt and How to Get Out. If you do not have your copy, that's okay, but this is one of those chapters where I have to really do a lot of summarizing. So I can't cover it all, there's just not enough time. But this chapter is one of my favorites and one that I like because it really throws people for a loop. I mean, it's just sort of fun to see people's reactions. And the title of the chapter is well, I don't care about your credit score, and I don't think you should either, or something along those lines. Basically, I don't give a fat rat what your credit score is, and you worry too much about it probably. You're just wasting time. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why your credit score doesn't matter, and we're going to talk about a few things that are associated with it, because there are some things you need to know. So let's first talk about the homework from last time. I assigned you when we were talking last time about that percentage on your house. I know we jumped around in some topics, but the last video was about mortgages or about houses and debt. And I gave you the assignment to say, okay, look at your mortgage, if you have one, and compare it to a percentage of your take-home pay. And just, are you on the right track there? Are you house poor because you spend too much money on your house? Are you doing well, and is it time to upgrade if you so desire? Or, you know, what if anything is out of balance, and what can you do to bring it into balance? That was a little bit of the homework that I gave you, and I hope that was helpful to you as you think about where you live, because it is important to live in the right home. Now, let's jump into credit scores. We do have to give some groundwork because not everybody knows even what your credit score means. So let me first tell you that we're going to talk about terms like the FICO score. We're going to talk about TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, which are all credit reporting agencies. And when I talk about your credit score, I'm really talking about the number that's between 300 and 850 that, according to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, who report out on all that stuff, they basically tell lenders, how good of a candidate are you if they let you borrow money, if someone lets you borrow money, that you're going to pay it back? That's basically what a credit score is, and the higher the number, the better. 850 is supposedly perfect. 300 means, well, you're probably dead, because I've never seen a score that low. But that's what the score range is, and that's what it's telling you. The higher the score, the more likely a creditor is to get paid back. That's really all it means. Now, the FICO score is not new. It's been around since the 1950s. I think 1956 is when it was established. And the whole point of that score is to help creditors at a glance to say, okay, if I lend them money, are they going to pay me back? That's all it really looks at. The problem is, I don't care about your credit score. Why not? Because, and this is important, okay, if I could underline this, I would, because credit is not our goal. Freedom is our goal. I don't care about your credit report. Actually, I do care about your credit report. I don't care about your credit score because I don't care about debt, except to make it go away. I don't care about your credit score because our goal is not credit. Our goal is freedom. Let that sink in for a second. If you have freedom, you don't need a good credit score. Now, I'm not saying you don't want one. We'll talk about that, but make sure you're aiming for the right target, okay? Simply put. And the way that I tell people to handle this is to take care of your money. Take care of your finances, and your credit score will take care of itself. Now, I actually pulled my credit score because I have a free way to do it through something that I have, and my credit score as of a couple of days ago was 800. That's pretty darn good. Now, it's been higher, it's been lower. I don't normally look at my credit score unless I'm going to talk on this topic because, again, I don't care. So my credit score is really good. Wow, way to go, Barry. Woo! Now, would you think less of me if my credit score were 400? Would it matter? And I'm going to argue no. Here's why. It's not a moral issue. It's not that your character is good or bad because you have a higher or lower credit score. It's not that you are more successful financially. All that credit score reflects is your ability to borrow and repay money. Great, wonderful. So now, let's pause, and we'll talk just in a minute more about what makes up your score, and that will hopefully open your eyes a bit more. But I'm not saying that you want a bad score. Okay, I don't want you to have a bad credit score. What I'm saying is don't focus on the score. So, and in fact, it's good to have a good credit score in a few different realms. Well, obviously the first of which is it's easier to borrow money. Duh. I mean, if I've already told you that the point of that score is to help lenders determine your credit worthiness, if you have a higher score, then they're going to lend you more money more easily. But we're not trying to borrow money. Remember, the goal of our purpose here is to get out of debt and stay out of debt. So we're not trying to borrow money, okay? But it will make it easier if you have a good credit score. The second thing is certain jobs or certain clearances that were required, for instance, military clearances. If you have a bad credit score, then you can't get certain clearances. If you have a bad credit score, you can't work at certain places. Now, I used to work for a large major bank, and they did look at your credit history. You had to be credit worthy. You had to prove that if you're going to take on debt that you could repay it. And so that was a part of the way that they looked at your application, was to determine your credit history. Now, okay, what they could do with that, all right, but again, so if you're looking for jobs, then yeah, it's easier to get one, especially certain kinds, if you have a good credit score. And third, you will oftentimes get a little bit of benefit with your insurance rates if you have a good credit score. Because if you think about it, if you take on debt and you show that you're willing and able to repay that debt, then generally speaking, you're a lower risk all the way around. But back to my point, I don't care about your credit score because credit is not our goal. Don't forget that. I've said it a few times now, and I'll probably say it a few more. Credit is not our goal. Freedom is. So what makes up your credit score? How does it work? How does that number get determined? Well, I'm going to basically burst your bubble and tell you that nobody really knows. I mean, there are people at FICO, at Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, those credit reporting agencies, they sort of know, and they sort of tell you straight from the FICO website. There are some things that they tell you, and they even give percentages. And in my book, I break those down, but they look at, actually, I want you to listen really closely. Here's what they look at to determine your credit score. They look at your payment history. So how good are you doing at repaying the debts that you have? And how good have you done over history in doing so since you borrowed that money? They look at the amount that you owe. So are you stretched thin? Have you really borrowed a whole bunch of money? They look at the length of your credit history. Are you 18, just now establishing credit? Or are you, 65 and you've got years and years of history to look back on? Because obviously over time, it's going to give a clearer picture of your financial issues and not than if you're just now establishing credit. They look at new credit. In other words, have you opened a lot of credit cards lately? Have you taken out a big loan? Have you just gone to get a new mortgage or buy a new car or all those kinds of things? They look to see what kind of new credit you're establishing, because a lot of new credit all at once indicates some risk. And then they look at the types of credit that you have. So a mortgage is a lower risk credit type than is a credit card, than is a title loan, than is, take your pick of the unsecured debts that are out there. So those are the things they look at: your payment history, the amount you owe, the length of your credit history, the new credit you have, and the types of credit that you've used out there. So those 5 things, and there's some percentages assigned to those. They're not equal weight. But if you think of all those things, what's the trend? Every single one of those is based on debt. 100%. They're looking at, those scores are reflecting how you do with debt. There's no measurement for Barry is a responsible citizen with his money. There is no measurement for how much that I have in my savings account. There's no measurement for how my Roth IRA is doing. There's no measurement for how much I'm saving toward retirement in general, or how I'm doing in giving, or how I'm doing in any other category of financial success that I really care about. All they look at is debt. So if we're not aiming to get into more debt, and instead are trying to get out of debt, then you follow along with me as to why your credit score doesn't really matter? That we shouldn't focus on it, that I don't care what it is, and you shouldn't either? Is that starting to make some sense? I hope it is. So what should you care about? That's the obvious question we need to address, because your credit score is out there for a reason. It's supposed to make it easier for lenders to look and say, should I let this person borrow money? Yes or no? Are they a risk? Yes or no? And then they make a decision. They look at this sheet and they're like, okay, ooh, they don't pay their bills. No. Ooh, they've got all these judgments. Ooh, no, scary, run away. Well, to a degree, that's a good thing. You don't want somebody who isn't going to be responsible in paying back debts to take on more debts. But by the same token, you don't want someone penalized who doesn't use debt because they don't use debt. So we've had this big discussion in the past about whether or not that I use credit cards and have debt and all that. The only credit card, the only debt that we have is I do have a credit card, because in my day job, I travel frequently enough that they require me to turn in an expense report for things that I spent. Well, I was doing that on my check card for a while, it was just getting to be too much. So I do have a credit card, and I do use that credit card for work reimbursed expenses. So my credit score reflects that I do have debt. My credit score reflects that I pay it off every month that I get it. My credit score reflects all of that activity, and that's a good thing for my credit score. That's one of the reasons it's so high. Beyond that, we don't have debt. We don't behave with debt because we don't have debt. We can't show that we're good at handling debt when we don't have it. So is it a bad thing to penalize us? I say no. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So some people have a really bad score because they don't have any history. Some people have a no score at all because there's nothing to score. So don't pay attention to your score, but do pay attention to your credit report. And there is a major difference in the two things. In fact, when the federal government was arguing that people needed to get free access to their credit reports so that they could have an accurate reflection of what creditors were looking at to determine their score, the laws that were passed that put that into place didn't say you can get your score for free. They said you can get your credit report for free. So in fact, they established a website that was required by the three major agencies, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. You can go to annualcreditreport.com, again, annualcreditreport.com, and you can get a free copy of your credit report, and you should. So what should you do with your credit score? Nothing. What should you do with your credit report? Well, you should pull that credit report, at least from one of the agencies. All three of them are supposed to be reporting pretty much the same thing, but you'll find it's not always that way. Because I'm the second or a junior, then my dad and I often had things confused on our report, especially early in my adulthood. There were a lot of things on my report that were his and not mine. So as an example, when Stacy and I went to get our mortgage when we bought our very first house, she pulled our report and she's like, something's not right here. I'm like, okay, what's wrong? She said, well, it shows you already have a mortgage, and she told me an amount I don't remember, but it was more than we were actually looking to get a mortgage for. And she said, oh, no, but it shows that you've had that mortgage since about the day you were born, or somewhere along there. It was silly. It was definitely not mine. It was something that was Dad's. So you do need to look at your credit report and determine if it is accurate. Because as I said earlier, remember, job clearance sometimes, or job prospects are a little easier. Insurance rates are a little preferable. You don't want to have a bad score if you shouldn't have a bad score, is what I'm getting at. Because your credit report should be an accurate reflection of your credit history. It's that simple. So what do? You go to annualcreditreport.com. There's a button that says, hey, I need to get my free report. You get your report. You can pull that one time per year from each of the agencies. So you can either do all three of them at once and wait a year and do it again, or you can do it once every 4 months because there's 3 of them, and 4 times 3 is 12. You can do it however you like, but go and pull your credit report. Look at it. It won't make a whole lot of sense in some cases, although they have made them easier to read now. But what you're looking for is stuff that isn't yours, or stuff that isn't correct. And if it isn't correct, all you got to do is dispute it. Now, you can dispute it online through that annualcreditreport.com. You can write into the agencies, and in my book I give the addresses, but they're not hard to find if you search for it. There's plenty of things that you can go look at, but the ideal scenario is that you go pull that report and just make sure it is accurate. That's the goal. So, and in fact, that's your homework. So there's what I want you to do. I had a question. Should I check with Credit Bureau for the fact that I can pull a credit report under my maiden name, but not under my married name? Shouldn't they go together with the same Social Security number? You should report out that you have an updated name. I don't know the laws in your state. I don't know all the details because it does vary state to state. But if you can pull it under your social and your maiden name, then it just means that the credit reporting agency doesn't know you got married. And it's not necessarily something that they need to know. It's something that you need to know and that certain others do. But as far as the reporting agencies, they're just reporting what they know. And they're reporting what the creditors are reporting. So chances are good that your mortgage company or credit cards or whatever that goes along with it are still reporting under your maiden name. And that's why it's still showing your report under your maiden name. I hope that helps. But generally speaking, that's not a major inaccuracy. If it still reports Stacy's maiden name or her married name, in some places it may report both. That's not wrong. It's still your name, at least your maiden name, so that's still safe. So I wouldn't be worried about that at all, unless that it comes to an issue where you're trying to apply for a joint debt, and then that joint debt, they may look at the report and ask some questions. So not that big of a deal. Okay, no more questions on that one, but you may have some. If you do, when you pull your report, if you have questions, shoot me a note. You can comment on this post. You can send me a private message. You can do whatever you like that would get you in contact with me. But I wanted you to really understand the importance or lack of importance in your credit score, because you're focusing on the wrong thing if you're focused on your credit score. As I said earlier, and I'm going to say one last time as I wrap up, I don't care about your credit score, because we're not aiming for the goal of credit. We're aiming for the goal of freedom. So with that, go pull your credit report. Make sure it's accurate, and let your score take care of itself. Just behave with money, and let everything else take care of itself. That's all I've got for you today. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk again soon, and have a great one.